need you, that dynamic between teacher and student, teacher learner changes. Okay. So for all those elementary and kindergarten teachers out there, and not this, I'm not suggesting that they have it easier because the learners are so young, they actually have it harder because they must be more thorough in their approach because the learners are their wants, needs, and expectations. They can't communicate them as well, right? So elementary school teachers, they need to really be experts in pedagogy, and they need to know their stuff, and they need to be very thorough, and they need to be extremely planning cultures cautious, and they need to be very affirming. And normally, those teachers, especially if they are classically trained, properly trained, they're normally very good because their relationship with the learner is more scientific because they can use science and psychology, uh, and methods that are going to be a lot more solid. That's why many elementary school teachers, kindergarten teachers can teach most kids how to read, and they do that very effectively because and they can teach their colleagues how to do it because it's a science. It's more of a science. There's some art to it. Don't get me wrong, but it's more of a science in kindergarten. It's more of a science in the first grade. But as that young learner becomes more and more independent, and that amygdala starts to get crazy and more independent, and as the learner becomes more self-aware, then it becomes harder and becomes less scientific and more individual and more want, needs, and expectations. Uh, and the learner can communicate those wants, needs, and expectations, whereas the kindergartner, the pre-K, or the KG1, KG2, KG3, even the first grader may not be able to communicate what their wants, needs, and expectations are. Right? They can't even really communicate. Many of them can't communicate that they have to go to the potty. Right? So again, um, I'm not suggesting that KG learner or KG teachers or elementary school teachers has it have it easier. It's just they're more scientific. Okay, and you'll notice that like for licensure in the United States, elementary school teacher, they have to do more classes, and it's harder to get licensed as a K through 5 teacher, I believe. It's harder that license is harder than like the 7 through 12. Okay, and there's a reason because the people who do licensing, they understand it's a total difference because the learners are different, um, and it's less scientific. Let's say from grades 4 up, less scientific, it becomes less scientific because by the fourth grade, even the third grade, the learner becomes way more independent. Okay, so teachers have to be able to submit to the fact that teaching does not cause learning. They have to submit to that fact. Dr. Diane Lawson Friedman says students do not learn because we teach. Students do not learn because we teach. Willis tells us, Steve Willis says that what is what was taught, excuse me, I'm sorry, I got this wrong. Steve Willis says what is learned is not necessarily what was taught. Steve Willis says what is learned is not necessarily what was taught. that is that tells you right there. So the teacher says one thing, student learns something else. Why? Because the teacher does not have any control over what is taught. And the more and more governments try to shove information down a learner's or inside a learner's brain, it doesn't go to their brain, it goes to their throat. And they suffocate on nonsense. And you would notice the governments who have a very parochial, student-based, root memory focused approach to teaching and learning. Often these places are third world countries, and they have a lot to they still have a lot to learn by way of social justice. They still have a lot the way to learn about poverty. These are normally poverty-stricken places. These are normally places where they're not considered attractive on a world stage. These may be places where they may have very ancient laws, very brutal laws. These are places where innovation does not is not as frequent. Let's put it this way: innovation is not as frequent as it is in places where the learning is way more liberal. Now, as an American, it's going to sound like I'm only preaching waving the banner of the United States, but I will tell you this: America does not have the best school districts in the world or school system in the world. We can improve our school system. If you look, well, we can improve. There's a lot of things that we can improve, especially when it comes to math and science. Most American kids hate science, hate math, right? So there's a lot we can improve. Most American kids suck at geography because we live in the Western Hemisphere and we can't. I mean, there's only three countries there: Canada and Mexico, right? For the most part, not including South America, right? So we don't have an appreciation for geography, right? Um, but you have to ask yourself if American kids are traditionally weak in math and science, why for the last 100+ years, let's start from the Industrial Revolution to current times, has America led the charge of innovation? Something don't make sense here. I mean, if American kids on the PISA test and all these other international tests, we score middle of the pack, right? Normally America's like middle of the pack. Well, how in the heck does all the innovation come out of America? I'll tell you why. There's other reasons, but one of the primary reasons because the American approach ultimately is you can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
The approach is more in America is about building relationships, right? So that take it or leave it, building relationships. So when a person finally realizes, hey, look, I need to do something to put some money in my pocket, and I know this place called America is not, they're not forcing me to learn anything. I need to go out here and figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
So the conditioning and brainwashing is not there. It's three things that a learner needs in order to be successful. Learner needs to be self-determined. A learner needs to be self-regulated, and a learner needs to experience as much self or gain self-efficacy. Efficacy. Efficacy. What is our job as teachers? To help students become self-determined, self-regulated, and experience as much self-efficacy as possible. How do we do that? By becoming statues. What do I mean by that? Being perfectly imperfect. If you look at a statue is often not perfect. And the author intentionally puts flaws in the statue, makes the statue abstract. Why? To promote higher order thinking. Why did the artist do this? What is he trying to say about the context of the theme that's being presented in the statue? What did he mean by this? Let me do some more research. Our job is to promote self-determination, self-regulation, and self-efficacy. That's our only job. And we do it by becoming statues. See, teachers' biggest problem is that we talk too damn much in the classroom. Why? Because most of us have ego problems. You cannot be egotistic. You cannot be self centered. You cannot like to hear your own voice and be an effective teacher. Because uh, most effective educators know what to do and when to do it. Most effective educators know what to do and when to do it. And that comes over time and that comes through submission. You cannot be an effective educator but a narcissist and a narcissist. And a narcissist. You cannot. You cannot be an effective educator and a narcissist. Um, it's very problematic. The interesting thing is how we set up our school districts and how we set up our program actually promotes the narcissist. The narcissist becomes the department chair and the principal, and which continues to compound a bad makes a bad situation worse, compounds a situation because the narcissist comes across as a good teacher. They come across as a good teacher because they're loud and they're very animated, right? Because ultimately they want to hear their own voice. And they're good enough to get the students to replicate, not even replicate, uh, repeat. Let's use that word. Repeat what they said. So what the narcissist teacher does is to get the teacher to regurgitate, to get the students rather to regurgitate, to repeat word for word what they said. And if the student or students, the class is able to do that, then their teacher will give them a passing grade and it looks good. And that teacher's approach will keep the students at a lower level of thinking. So there's something called Bloom's taxonomy. I have it here. Okay. Bloom's taxonomy represents higher order thinking. And our job, remember we talked about self-determination, self-regulation, self-efficacy.
Yeah.
Through those three variables, we move students up the thinking pyramid. I call Bloom's taxonomy the thinking pyramid because ultimately that's what it is. Okay, it's up the thinking pyramid. And if you're a narcissist teacher, you keep your students right at knowing and understanding. Because
Blue.
Bloom's, Dr. Bloom's, right? Bloom's taxonomy. Right? It's very famous. Instructional designers, Fortune 50 companies in the world use this simple model. It's nothing simple, it's actually quite ingenious model to elevate their businesses. So Amazon does it well, Ford Motor Company does it well, Tesla does it, Toyota, Kellogg's, right? All these big companies, airline companies, Etihad, they follow this model to improve their company through what they call continuous improvement. Because when you work in a business, the system does not allow for narcissism. The team doesn't have any room for narcissism. There's no I in team, right? But in schools, you put somebody in a rectangle with a door, you call them teacher, and they get to pontificate for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 90 minutes, depending on the learning block, to a bunch of young people, and that teacher continuously talks for 45 minutes. And the teacher and the students are expected to regurgitate everything word for word, idea for idea, what that teacher said. So you have many teachers like that. This is in the textbook. What did the textbook say? What did I say? And they go blah blah blah. This is why in Charlie Brown, you ever watch Charlie Brown? The teacher was always that represented what teaching and learning is like. It's the person who stands up in front of you and go and that's what a lot of learners hear when they're in the classroom. And this person just stands up there for 35, 40 minutes and barely gives students opportunities to pontificate. It should be the students pontificating, not the teacher. The teacher should stand there as a statue and allow the students to consider the context, to consider the advantages, the disadvantages, to consider the flaws, to consider the righteousness, because every last one of those students are different, and they're gonna look at that statue different, and that statue only speaks through its characteristics, and that's how you allow students to move from knowing to evaluation. Now, I gotta tell you that there's two Blooms. There's original Blooms, and then there's the other right here. Basically, his colleagues in 2001 they revised his model. They did. They took all the. He had nouns. They turned the nouns into verbs, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, and it actually helps you to write great objectives. Okay, what they did that I disagree with, and a lot of other people would disagree with, is you see how it says evaluation and synthesis are the highest, the two highest.
Yes.
What they said was synthesis is the highest and evaluation is the second highest. I disagree with that, and I can explain why. So synthesis is creating things. So in the revised model, synthesis is the highest order thinking skill. Totally disagree with that. Why? Because if you have a mindset of continuous improvement, you always try to make something better. So creating cannot be the highest level. The highest level of thinking is synthesis. I mean, is evaluation. Taking something, creating it, and then seeing if you can make what you created better. And then, moreover, that allows you to become a consultant now and serve some real good to society because now you can take things that other people created and also make those things better. So evaluation or help them make it better rather. So evaluation is the highest order thinking skill. But again, in the revised, so when you see the revised one, you will notice that synthesis is on top in the revised model. And again, most people, um, there's a big camp of people who disagree with the revised model from that only because of the ranking of the higher order of the thinking skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on one second. I want to see why the dog is barking.
Hello, Teacher Mary. Good afternoon. What time you want to come today?
Daddy's here. Oh.
Sorry to ask, but what time?
We're about to wrap up. We're about to wrap up. Okay. So um so ultimately what our job is to move students up that thinking paradigm. That's ultimately our job.
But in school, most of the time, even when we make our weekly plan, lesson plan, they will say, oh, it may we have to stick with the book.
And then they're not educators.
Yeah. So that's the problem
The-
I have mostly in my
The,
class.
the, the problem, the reality is, I know, I've been here 13 years. You have a bunch of people who don't know nothing about education.
Yeah, that's the problem. And
It's a big problem, and the only people that's going to be able to correct it is the Saudi citizens. When they start demanding more from school owners and more from the Ministry of Education, because right now there's too many uh, school owners, and I'll be blunt, who they own schools and they know nothing about teaching and learning. And they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you, if you talk to a school learner, they'll tell you, I don't know anything about.
Yeah,
teaching and learning.
yeah. Even when they interview and you say something, they're like, "Mm."
Yes.
So also it's not about us teacher, but how they are planning things. Is that what amazes me sometimes? The
So
books are
one
there.
of the problems is planning is not planning is not something that is well developed. And then the problem my problem that I have with Saudi Arabia and teaching and learning is not the Saudis. I don't blame the Saudis, not at all. You know what I blame? I blame all the Western educators who come
The
here
educators that come to the
and,
school.
and don't and don't either I don't even blame the Westerners who don't know how to teach because there's a lot of Westerners who come here don't know how to teach, but they need to get a job,
Yeah.
so they teach,
Yeah.
right? And they just fall into the system. I don't blame them because they should have never been hired in the first place. Just because you're an American or Brit or Australian or you got a certain skin complexion doesn't mean you can teach, right?
Yeah.
All right, that's number one. I blame who I blame is, or the people that I blame are all people like me who are educated, who about teaching and learning, who have studied it and do not demand better from school owners, mainly school owners, because the school owners is the ones that actually, like in the United States, there's two powerful people when it comes to education. It's the principal and the superintendent. They're the two because they're the two groups of people that can affect change like that. The superintendent of a school district and the principal of a school. They affect change like that. Here, it's the school owner that can affect change like that. Right? So but what happens is you get Westerners who are highly educated, who know better, who don't encourage, demand, consult with that school owner to do better. Why? Because they want to make it easy for themselves. Because if I open that can of worms, now I'm working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day to rebuild a school, which could be 2 years. It takes 2 years to do, if you want to do it properly, and you got to deal with people. And most people come in and say, I don't want to do that. I want to get my little money, and I'll continue this to do. So we'll buy a Pearson, and we'll buy this book and McGraw Hill, and I don't want to. And and what happens is the owner says, "Hey, look, I'm paying this guy. He's British. He's American. She's Australian. They are this in their home. The beauty is the Saudi owner will tell you, I don't know. He's buying and he's amazing. He'll tell you, I don't know. Right? So, and now you got a school. Imagine you have a school been running for 30 years, and the school sucks, and it's been sucking all 30 years. But they have 2,000 students. They have 1,500 students. Right? They have the owners hiring consultants, and all the consultants are saying, yeah, we are the best. Right? And then here comes Dr. Ray saying, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. You think he's going to listen to me? No. He's going to say, I've been running for 30 years. I got all these other people around me saying everything is fine. The parents are really not complaining, right? And the parents who do leave because they realize it sucks, they're not going to really, in this culture, you don't say, I'm leaving because you suck. You just leave. Like in the States, we say, we make a big deal about it. You suck and I'm leaving and I'm telling 35 other people that you suck. It's not like that here because in this culture, it's considered rude. So people just leave and the lie continues, right? So that's the problem with teaching learning. There's too many egos involved. And that's all over the world, not just Saudi Arabia. Because there are things that almost every country can do better. There's things that almost every country can do better to improve the relationship between learner and educator. So ultimately, we're going to get into more later,
Okay.
but I wanted you to get this idea down. I'll get it in a second. This idea down that we're not teachers.
Okay.
All right. You have to, we are, later on, I'll tell you in the next class, who we are individuals who help people become self-determined, self-regulated, and experience self-efficacy. And we do it in a very processed way, and we do it in a very humble way. All right. This is not the Chinese kung fu master who's teaching the young kid how to do kicks and punches and the wise. No, as educators, we have to realize that we're not very wise. Right?
Okay.
Why? Because as Dr. Diane Lawson Freeman said, teaching does not cause learning. The second part of what she said, but we must act as if it does. Teaching does not cause learning, but we must act as if it does. And the second problem is the problem. The second problem is the problem. We have to act as if it does. And and what she's really saying is we are acting as if it does. She's not advocating for that we have to act as if it does, because we don't. The opposite really needs to happen. We need to be able to communicate and say, listen, I don't know. I don't know. This is going to be on you. I'm going to be here to support you in your self-determination, your self-regulation, and your self-efficacy. That's what I'm going to be here to do. Yeah. Listen, I called them. First of all, the lady it's 35 minutes late. That's number one. And number two, I called and put her number at that security is irking me. I gave them the name 2 hours ago. No, I don't have a Muhammad. Aisha, is that her husband? They'll let people do that gate, and we didn't call. And then when I give them the name, then they don't let the person at the gate. Jesus Christ, man, people are retarded. Anyway, so please understand what you experience here in Saudi Arabia is not teaching and learning. And I will say that to anyone in their face, including the king himself and the prince. I wish I had a second. I wish MBS would ask me, Dr. Ray, what do you think? And I'll tell him, this sucks here. The reality is he knows. That's why he created the RCRC schools, because he knows it sucks. If it didn't suck, he would never create the RCRC schools. So you see all these British schools popping up, Beach Hall and all these schools, because they know that they're trying to make a major correction. So what they're hoping for is that people run to these RCRC schools. In the RCRC schools, they have more leeway. They don't have to do certain things, right? So the hope is that in the RC that the people run and flock to the RCRC to put these other schools out of business, right? Because the fact of the matter is, they're trying to do it. If it was me, if I was king of the world, okay, I'll just say you don't meet these standards, you're closed. But you can't do that here in Saudi Arabia, because number one, it creates a big problem, because then where kids are going to go to school. So the reality is something is better than nothing.
And also, they allow their more Arabic people to teach their kids than us native people.
Well, I think here's what I learned about parents here. Parents don't care who's teaching their kids. They just want effective education.
Yeah.
They don't care as long as you are effective. They don't care. The average Saudi parent, Arab parent, They really don't care, especially Saudis. Saudis don't care. Now, other nationalities do.
Oh, yeah.
Other nationalities do, but Saudis don't.
I had a PTO and most of my Saudi parents came and said, Miss Mary, you want my kid in the class.
yeah.
You want my kid in the class.
Saudis don't care. I can tell you that. Saudis just want somebody who's going to be effective, right? But there are other nationalities here that would rather their own people or a certain type of person.
Yeah.
And that's problematic too. And so everybody contributes. And so the big problem in education in Saudi Arabia are the expats. Because the expats send so many different signals that it can't promote any real change in any real direction. Okay. So what I want you to do
Yes.
is I want you to read chapter 1 of the Smooth Move book.
Okay.
And then what I want you to do is take the conversation that we had today and also chapter 1 and do your first journal. Okay? By hand.
Yes. Chapter 1 of
The Smooth Move.
Yes.
Smooth Moves.
This one. I have. This is what I have.
Yeah.
So
So read chapter 1 of that. You'll find that it's very easy to read.
go to you file there was a program to bring this file.
You should be able to.
Try to open the docs. They said limited connectivity.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing. You may be offline. Are you on your internet or mine?
My internet
I'm getting the same thing. It's weird.
is given like this, so they are connected.
Yeah, I'm getting the same message.
Is it supposed to open with any map that
No, it
it
should
should be open directly?
it should open. There might be something going on because it's a Word document.
Or maybe it's supposed to open with docs?
No. What's going on here? It's weird. It's very weird. Let's try it again. Couldn't preview file. Hold on. Hold on a second. Wait. All right, so it opened when I did it through Docs.
Docs?
Yeah.
I'm trying with the PDF.com.
Yeah, it opened just now when I did it through Docs. So it opened. It's weird though, very weird. Even though, yeah. When you open it, what you could do is just save it. You could download it, right, and then save it as a Microsoft Word document. So just download when it finally opens, download it, and then save it as a Microsoft Word onto your computer.
Okay.
Okay. That way you don't have to you can just
I don't have to come back.
always go back. It'll be saved on your computer. All right.
Okay.
So that's what I want you to do. Read chapter 1, and then take the notes. Take the